Hi guys, Coach Victor Robledo, and today we're going to talk about your bad knees. In this video, we're going to talk about why you likely have a bad knee and what you need to do, simple things that you can do. Now, there are literally thousands of variations, but I like to give you some simple steps that you can do, some reps, the exercises, a little bit of technique. But before we get into that, if you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe this to send this out. In the end, it's tough to come across people that don't have something that's ever happened to their knees. Most people at some point in time encounter knee problems, but I have to tell you, it starts way before, and we'll get into that right now. So if you surf, climb, do jiu-jitsu, I know a lot of my jiu-jitsu guys, because we're kneeling, that creates different types of issues in the knees. Yes, there are different types of symptoms that can be associated with your knee pain, but for me, it always comes down to the same thing. And that comes down to the stories that your body's telling you before you get to that point. A lot of times when we're so engrossed in our activities and our life, we're not paying attention to the messages our body's sending us. So the hips are really where we need to inspect. So just like a detective, my job as a trainer, strength coach, rehab specialist is to figure out what happened before to give this person some problems. So much like if you have an elbow problem, I always inspect the shoulder, just like a pitcher, right? The pitcher is having an elbow problem. Oftentimes it's to poor functioning shoulder mechanics or to bad mechanics associated to tightness in the shoulder. The knee is telling us the same thing, and that's usually some level of gluteal inhibition. So chicken or the egg? Probably had a little bit of problems in the hip. If you're having some problems and you surf and you're having problems with your knee, it's probably something going on in the hip, whether that's tightness associated from sitting on the board, or in jiu-jitsu, if we're constantly on our knees, or in that guard position, knees connected to the elbows, your hips are going to tighten up and stop functioning like they should. So let's get into the specifics on how we can rehab your knee. Knee pain can be pretty frustrating for a lot of people, but if you follow these steps, it should help alleviate, get you to heal, and start making it so that your body's functioning correctly. I have a lot of friends and clients who go through this, and I promise you, if you stick to some level of this protocol, it will help your knee health improve dramatically. So the first thing is to release tight areas, right? We talked about some level of inhibition in the glutes impacting how the knee functions, or impacting your mechanics, whether it's on a surfboard or on the mats, or just walking around. So we're going to start off by releasing the hips. So you're going to take a tennis ball or a cross ball, and we're going to go into a figure 4 position and get into the tissue of the hip. Now, in general, we're trying to get all into the area of the glute near the piriformis. So we're going to go figure 4. We're going to place that right on the hip, and from here, we're going to lean our weight onto that ball and hold it about 20 to 30 seconds on a trigger point. If it's too painful, back off. If you don't feel it enough, put some weight onto it. And after about 20, 30 seconds, adjust it. We're just trying to get into the entirety of the tissue of the glutes. You'll figure out where that is. And just as a point of interest, compare left to right. That's something a lot of people don't realize, is they're so preoccupied with their injured side, they don't take a look at what the difference is. For me, my right hip is always a little bit tighter than my left hip, so I know I need to pay attention and release that. Now, once you've released the area with either a foam roller or a tennis ball, then it comes down to, then the next step is to, number 2, is to start stretching out the area and create a little symmetry. Again, you'll notice a difference from right to left, depending on what side is injured. It should see a little bit more tightness. If your right knee is bothering you, that right hip is likely tighter. That should be your first clue that they're related. So the S stretch is one of my favorite stretches here. You're gonna do it by creating an S with the legs. It's a pigeon variation. In yoga, we do pigeon pose. Not necessary to go into that if you have extreme knee pain, but loosening up the hip, comparing it on one side, and then switch and do it to the other side. I recommend you hold this stretch for at least 2 to 3 minutes. If you're gonna go paddle out, you can do these at home before you hop in the car. If the car ride's really long, I do recommend you do it on the beach or before you train. That's important. If you feel comfortable, you can lower yourself. If you're getting plenty of stretch here, by all means, you can keep that position. So that's the S stretch. Now we're going to get into some movements that you can do to start rehabbing your knee and essentially the legs and posterior chain. So the first movement we're doing is after you've done your release and also some stretches, is you're going to do a bent leg bridge. Now we're going to put a little special twist on that by taking a yoga block or a towel or a pillow if you don't have that, and placing it between the knees. The idea is to activate the glutes a little bit before you come up onto your feet and do our 2 standing maneuvers. So this is our bent leg bridge with a block. Hands on the floor, squeeze on the block, hips up and down. What you're trying to see with the bent leg bridge is see if you can activate the glutes evenly. If there's still a little bit of amnesia or inhibition, you don't feel like that one side's working well, go back to your MFR, do a little more myofascial release with your tennis ball or a foam roller, stretch a little bit more, then start again. I recommend 30 to 40 repetitions before you come onto your feet and start working both some direct rehabilitation of the knee as well as igniting the posterior chain more. So one of my favorite ways to rehab the knee and regain range of motion is with a suspension trainer. So from here, you're going to stand about hip width distance and hold on with the arms and elbows bent. From here, we're going to push the hips back and descend down. What's nice about this is we're igniting glutes, hamstrings, thighs, and promoting greater range of motion. What's nice about it as well is that you can help yourself up. So it also promotes greater depth and flexion into the knee, which allows you to start building strength along a greater range of motion. And that's a big part of rehab. The last piece of the puzzle, we're doing a heel elevated squat, often referred to as a cyclist squat. Now, if you don't have a slant board at home, you can use a yoga block. If you don't have that, you can take a couple 2x4s. What I love about this motion, again, it takes the ankles out of the equation. A lot of times people feel like they have to squat and not have any movement forward of their knees. Remember, if we're looking to rehab our knees, we need to promote range of motion and strength in those specific muscles. Can you do a heavy barbell squat here? Yes, but we're trying to promote greater range of motion. So what's nice about elevating the heels is that it allows you to work greater into depth into the knee and rehab that range of motion and strength with body weight. Again, you pick your range of motion. If this is all you got for a particular day, promote some range of motion. With both this and the suspension trainer, work your sets up 20, 30, 40. See if you can do lots of repetitions, build up that strength, and do that on the daily for rehab to get your knees better.